Hi there. Welcome to the Tea Toast and Marmalade podcast. I'm Marmalade. I'm sitting here in my office tea room with my tea. I have already had my toast and marmalade, so there wouldn't be any chewing in your ears. Today I'm just sipping on my English breakfast tea, an old standby, and I'm enjoying the solitude. I'm going to try and do this podcast without stumbling, falling, or tripping over my own words, but if I do, I apologize. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that the photographs accompanying the podcast were all taken by myself. Photography is just something I do in my leisure time. I'm actually not that good at it, but nevertheless, I really do enjoy nature. And it just feels like on occasion when nature visits you with some awe, outstanding view or creature, bird, that you're supposed to just capture that. So that's why I do photography, because I'm trying to just capture this amazing creation that's all around me. One of my favorite songs when I was young was All Things Bright and Beautiful, and I used to sing that endlessly. And then once I graduated from the hymn, I moved on to it's an English country garden, where I would sing endlessly about gardens and insects and birds, and it was always sort of just ending up. So if you're like me, you probably do the same thing. You probably try and capture the amazing creation around you. So that's my photography. If you want to contact me at any point, you're more than welcome to. You can reach me by email at mayammalay20@gmail.com. I do believe there is a slide on the podcast slideshow that gives you that information. I thought long and hard about what podcast topic I should plunge into, and while it was a difficult decision, being that there are so many topics to choose from, my final choice was depression. Yes, that huge giant that coexists with us as if it was part of our intimate family. And the reason I chose depression was after looking long and hard at my own life and the lives of a couple of close family members and friends, it was evident to me that in order to turn our worlds around and to turn our lives around, that if we want to engage new and exciting things, and if we want to live lives that we believe are worth living, then we cannot have that dark, stumbling block always in our way. I have often thought about depression as a dark cloud hanging over our heads, like the cartoon Charlie Brown. Everywhere he seemed to go, there was always this foggy, dark, rainy cloud hovering above him. And I just began to perceive that sort of represented depression. Now, in full disclosure, I am not an expert in clinical matters or research. I do have my SSW, Social Service Worker diploma, which gave me some insight to counseling, therapy, addictions, and loads of other stuff. But I am not a doctor, and nor would I claim to know more than the next person about any medical or emotional issue. My personal experience with depression and my experience with friends and family members who have dealt with depression gives me some very candid, behind-the-scenes insight from a real-life perspective. Depression is such a barrier, a roadblock to many of us. It seems like a logical place to address this sensitive issue right out of the start gate. I am not counseling today though, and this is not necessarily a life coach session, although I do life coaching. I'm sharing I'm simply bringing the laundry basket out of the closet. So first, hear me say this when I say to you that if you are struggling with depression, you are not alone. And no, those are not just words that are meant to tickle your ears. It is truth. If you have or do suffer from bouts of depression, you are literally standing among millions of others who feel the same as you do. You often feel alone because your compound is where you exist. But stepping out of that compound, you can see many other people deal with the same issues. Depression actually knows no boundaries. It adheres to no borders. It does not care if you are rich or poor, fat or thin. It doesn't care if you have dark skin or light skin. It doesn't care if you're a scholar or if you've never ever gone to school. It just doesn't care what house you live in or what your room looks like. Some of the most popular, beautiful, happy people you know or know of could very likely be secretly suffering behind closed doors. That is the reality of depression. Those who suffer often feel the need to cloak it, to keep it hidden, and therein lies its power. There are loads of information and informative sites out there for your own personal research, should you choose to do any. I found in my personal research that there is a little bit of controversy around the idea of chemical imbalances. Some sites and notes that I read said that an imbalance in serotonin levels can cause depression, while others say that they're not exactly sure if that's true. If you venture out to do some research of your own, then please remember this. At the end of the day, no matter what you've read, who wrote the information you're reading, the only thing that matters is the reality that you live in. Or if you are researching on behalf of someone else, then the only thing that matters is the reality of their existence. Some of the greatest medical scholars, with numerous letters behind their names, may have no personal experience, no personal clue about depression at all. They have no idea what you are feeling in the corners of your compound. They may or may not ever experience it for themselves in a way that you do, or in a manner that you or your loved ones have. Anyway, after saying that, I say this, that I did go to the American Psychiatric Association. Not really sure why I stopped there, but this is what it mentions on the topic of depression, which actually, once you've done a few bouts of research, you'll find that it's par for the course, and it comes around to be almost the same information. So here it is. Topic of depression. Depression is a common and sometimes serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Depression can cause feelings of sadness and or loss of interest in activities, even ones that you used to truly enjoy. Depression can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. Depression can decrease a person's ability to function at work or at home. Depression can exhibit symptoms varying from mild to severe, such as feeling sad or having a depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasure life activities, changes in appetite, weight loss or gain unrelated to dieting, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, loss of energy or increased fatigue, feelings of worthlessness and guilt, difficulty thinking, concentrating, or making decisions, thoughts of death and or suicide or physical harm. And in my own edition, I'm going to add this from my own experience, and that is the increase in mood swings such as crying, feeling aggravated, feeling agitated more than usual, increased sensitivity to the actions and the words of others, and an overwhelming feeling of hopelessness. I want to make this special note though. If you do some research, you're going to notice that on several of the sites, they do make this disclaimer, and that's that in order for a medical expert to make a clinical diagnosis of depression, the symptoms must last at least 2 weeks or more. So yes, 2 weeks or more of those that we just mentioned before they will make a clinical diagnosis of depression. So the causes of depression, if we look at this, can be as long as all of our arm lengths put together, and they certainly do differ from person to person. If you have a couple of these and you don't have the others, if you feel things that other people don't, it's very individual. So what we're trying to do is just have a look at our lives to see if depression's there, if it exists. And as far as the causes, well, let's read through this list here. And that again is off the American Psychiatric Association website, and it says here that the causes can be differences in certain chemicals in the brain may contribute to symptoms of depression. Now, here is a place that is saying that they do believe that the imbalance of chemicals can affect depression. Other sites, not so sure. Genetics, depression can run in families. So you may look around and see that other people are dealing with the same things you are. Personality, people with low self-esteem, who are easily overwhelmed by stress or who are generally pessimistic, appear to be more likely to experience depression than others. Environmental factors, continuous exposure to violence, neglect, abuse, and poverty. Physical, postpartum. After you have a baby, there's a great many people out there, and if this happens to you, you're not alone. There is a great many people who have postpartum depression. After surgeries, when facing illnesses, dealing with illnesses, and hormonal changes such as menopause, all these things can contribute to causing depression. Events, traumatic events can actually begin a spiral of negative, unbalanced emotions and moods. From my own experience, I can tell you that I believe that is true. When they told me I had skin cancer, I spiraled. I really did go into a state of depression. It was a while before I had to work out of that. What to do? Now, here we go. The process of dealing with depression will depend on the severity of depression and the causes. But before we can even move forward, we have to face the truth about ourselves and or others that are dealing with depression. So let's look at this. First and foremost, honesty and acknowledging that our struggle exists. That's our first step. So let's have a look at it. When might you consider depression is active in your life? Well, if you or someone you know are struggling with trying to get on top of your moods, your emotions, your highs and your lows. If you feel as if you are at war with your emotions. If you or someone you know feels as though you are constantly under that dark cloud. If you feel as though you're always trying to climb a slippery wall that you just simply cannot conquer. Or, and most importantly, if you're struggling with thoughts of suicide and self-harm. Any of these will give you an indication that you're struggling with depression. But please note, and I say this again, you are not alone. No matter how alone you feel, you are not alone. That is number one. Number two is there is help. The reality regarding help is that some of the help may come from others. Friends, family, crisis lines, doctors, counselors, therapists. And some of the help will come from you. Okay, so that's that, and the cat is out of the bag. Here we are talking about that giant secret we swore we would never mention. We can't stop here. So let's move forward just a little further, and let's look at some of the truth, our truth, your truth, that secret stuff that, nobody knows but you, and the reactions that we have. I'm sipping my tea. Okay. So here we go. Maybe you have worked very hard to hide the fact that you suffer with your emotions and your moods. Maybe you just withdraw when depression hits because it's easier than facing the world. Maybe you cut people off or you personally shut down. Maybe you feel too embarrassed to talk about it. Maybe you see it as a weakness. Maybe you are afraid to tell anyone because you fear their reaction and rejection. Maybe you don't know how to reach out or who to reach out to. Maybe you just don't trust anyone enough to share. Maybe you're afraid of taking medication. Maybe you are fearful of having the mental illness stigma attached to you. Maybe you know you need help, but the words just simply will not come out of your mouth. Maybe you fear letting someone in or letting somebody see the darker sides of you. Again, I will always keep saying this, you are not alone. Where you think I got this list from, and where do you think some of my own personal experience came from? Yes, myself and my closest friends and families, all of the stuff that I just read, for sure. Maybe you have reasons that I didn't mention here, but even then I believe if you mentioned it, somebody else would probably have it. More people than you can even imagine think and feel. Think as you do, feel as you do. Another piece of breaking news is it's not your fault. You did not wake up and suddenly decide, oh, depression's one of those life experiences I really need to experience. It would never be your first choice to have a life that offered ample opportunity to feel horrible. It's not your fault. You didn't set out to get this. So going back to our list of actions and reactions, I will continue on here. I acknowledge that it is very hard work to hide the fact that you suffer from depression. But from experience, I'm going to tell you this, it doesn't get any easier to hide it. In fact, it gets harder and harder as time goes on. It is very hard work to hide your struggle with emotions and moods, and eventually, like erosion, we become worn and eroded, and the telltale signs of struggle are extremely evident. Withdrawing and not facing the world is a choice many make because it is easier than dealing with the world. The truth is, I have always done this, and to my knowledge, the world simply continued on while I sat alone with my pain and nothing changed at all. Your emotions don't always get under control because you have withdrawn. Now, having said that, there are times when withdrawing long enough to catch your breath or to regroup or process is actually wisdom, especially when you're dealing with loss or substantial information needing time to settle and process. Cutting people off and shutting down sounds horrible, but I admit I have used this one, and as a survival technique most of my life. I don't need this as much anymore because I'm healing in many areas, so the need to shut out every other person is not as great or as needed. But my healing in this regard emerged out of other areas of healing I have walked through. I will share more as the podcasts unfold. Too embarrassed to talk about it. Yes, our emotions and our moods are intimate, and sharing any kind of intimate truth with others is not easy. Not even with spouses at times, or parents, or closest of friends. We would rather keep it in our private vault than to share because it saves us the grief of facing our own truth, and because we may not totally trust others the way that we would like to or wish we could. Maybe we don't even trust ourselves. Being in control, up, positive, happy, are characteristics of people who have life together. At least that is how we view things through the social media lens. So of course, we are going to feel like a crumbling bag of garbage when we compare with those who present in such a positive way. Now, here is some truth and food for thought. We need to remember that faces can be masks, and they do not always reveal the truth on the other side of the picture. A smile very well could be a frown upside down. And the fact that we can present on social media platforms what we want the world to think of us doesn't mean it is so. So be wary of buying into all that you see. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but those words may not all represent the picture. You may feel another person's reaction. You may fear the another person's reaction and the possibility that they may reject you when they find out who you really are. But think about this for one split second. Who are you telling? Have you chosen wisely? Sharing intimate details is something very important. It is like classified info, top secret stuff. If you fear someone's reaction or rejection, either don't share at all or share tidbits to test the water. This is what I did. There's my secret. I would notoriously raise the topics I needed to survey in a conversation to see what the reaction, and based on the reaction I witnessed, I made a decision whether or not to share my top secret stuff or not. Let's face it, James Bond doesn't share all his secrets with all the other agents, right? Only a select few even knew he was where he was. That was my approach. Maybe you don't know how to reach out or who to reach out to. In this case, I would look at all your options. Visit some websites, see what they suggest, and if they have groups or live chats or emails so you can connect, maybe begin there. I would say if you don't know how to reach out, then the people around you might not be your primary choice for sharing. I have done the reach out to the stranger thing regarding other issues in my life, and I must admit I was frightened at the thought. In fact, when I finally phoned and I didn't have any other options like emails, my hands were shaking. I said I was just looking for information to help a friend, and once the conversation began, it was actually easy to just let go. I approached it as I needed help for someone else, but it wasn't long before I was receiving the help I needed through just this one step that I took. If you have trust issues, and honestly, don't you think trust anyone enough? If you don't think you can trust anyone enough to share your struggles with, then it's probably better to phone a crisis line where nobody can see you and you don't even have to give your name. Trust me when I say this, they are not tracing your call either, so you're good to go. You are just looking for advice at this point, and you're not sharing the deepest, darkest secrets. Although it is wise to mention here that if you are struggling with suicidal, personal, harming thoughts, then actually asking for help would be necessary and life-altering. You will be surprised how much help can actually come your way once you do reach out. It's amazing. So what if you're afraid of taking medication? Okay. So medication may or may not be the answer to the depression that affects you. And if you do reach out and medication is on the table, then accept it as the first step in gaining control of your life. That is what this is all about, getting your life back. Just so you know, medication doesn't have to be permanent. It may just be the very thing that begins the process of healing in your life. Maybe later you will be better and able to look at other ways of dealing with the reality of your own world. Maybe homeopathic approaches will be an option further down once you are on top of your game. So when you feel bad about medication, please just stop and look at all the people in the world that are on blood pressure pills, who need to take them for the rest of their lives. But to them, living matters more than that one pill they take each morning. Look at the diabetics who struggle through numerous medication trials, changing diets, injecting insulin several times a day in order to continue on with life. Even those, they feel down some days because of their medical illnesses. They forge forward with the help in hand because living matters more. Medication is something you discuss with your doctor, and really, you are not obligated to discuss it with anybody else. Nobody will shove it down your throat, but it is an option, especially if there is cause to believe a chemical imbalance is present, and if so, there may not be another choice. You may need this option, or at least until the tables turn and you are surfing the waves of emotion like a pro, and picture yourself just surfing like this huge wave of emotion, just like a pro. Once those tables are turned, once you're on top of your game, you may not need the help that you first need when you start out. Now let's talk about the mental illness stigma. Stigma. First, I would like to say that in my research, I found that some sites refer depression as medical illness, not mental illness. And I really liked when I read that because I believe it to be true. So many factors contribute to depression that it actually needs to come under the umbrella of medical and not mental illness references. After all, isn't our mental state part of our medical state, just as our sugar production is and our circulation is? Medical illness stigmas have lingered on in some regard from the old days, but here in the year 2020, things are changing. Our worlds are changing. Our words are changing. Treatments have changed. Counseling has changed. Group and family therapy has changed. Almost everything is acceptable and openly discussed. Don't get me wrong, I am not belittling the struggle you and I have faced, but the reaction to depression is not as it once was. In the years gone by, there was definitely a stigma. A stereotyping was the norm. But the norm over a great many areas, not just depression. Today's world of social media allows for literally anything to be put out there, even before they censor it. And so discussions on personal struggles are actually all over if we care to read through the words. People overshare all the time, and for the most part, they even overshare when you don't want them to share at all. They still do. We are so past the ignorance of thinking everybody is focused on us. If we are honest as we browse the numerous platforms available to us, we will notice that the majority of people are completely consumed with themselves. Your fear may be real to you, but gladly you are in an era where the stigmas are being challenged and removed. So from here on in, you will refer to the depression in your own life or the life of a loved one as a medical condition. And that is how we begin moving forward. If your greatest fear is going to see the doctor, then I would say this. If there is someone available that you're very comfortable with and can trust, have them make the appointment for you and maybe even go with you. They can sit in the waiting room or enter the doctor's room with you, whichever is more comfortable for you. Your level of comfort will dictate this call. If you think you will choke when the time comes to share while you're in the office, maybe here your friend or family member can step in. Now, what if nobody can go with you and you just know that you're going to choke when it's your turn to say while you're there? Might I suggest something a friend of mine did? My friend knew the choking was absolutely 100% going to happen. And so, prior to the meeting with the doctor, a short letter was written by my friend to the doctor that described the reason for the visit and also described my friend's inability to speak openly about the topic. My friend took time to write the letter and made sure that enough information was in there that covered most of the questions that we just knew the doctor was going to ask. The doctor actually took it from there. There are so many reasons for why we struggle with depression. Each life has its own stories, its own truths, its own dreams. The reason we want to deal with depression in our lives is so that we can have lives, so we can dream again. We can laugh loads and enjoy what might be our one and only life, regardless of age, wealth, and appearance. If we have this giant obstacle in our path every single day, we will not live to the fullest. Depression has no right to rob us of our hopes and our dreams, our love, our humanity, and our relationships in our life. We are not goldfish meant to live in little glass bowls watching out an out of focus view of the world pass us by. We were not created to sit by the window and watch the world go by, nor were we meant to crawl on our hands and knees day in and day out because we feel so incredibly overwhelmed by hopelessness. We are humans and we are great. The butterfly's beauty is displayed on its wings. And so for us to reveal our beauty, we need to find our wings. That is the real reason we need to deal with depression. And that is the real reason I'm doing these podcasts, because so many wings are hidden and so many butterflies are waiting to take flight and reveal to the world the beauty that is displayed upon those wings. And there we have it, our introduction to depression. We covered a lot, really. And as we move on, we will tackle the reality of our lives, and we will see if we can begin the process of transformation personal to us that will help the butterfly emerge. So as we close today, I want you to think about the things that I've discussed here. Think about their relevance to your life. I want you to write down in a book or in a journal or mental notes on how you feel on a daily basis. Is depression something you're struggling with? If it is, how can you get help? How can you get on top of your game? How can you get in control of the things you need to be in control of? How do we begin the process? But I just want to say today that you're not alone. We are all here. There are enormous amounts of people that are either listening to this, who have dealt with this, who have advice to offer. And we're all getting together because this is an issue that needs to be brought out of the closet and looked at. So once again, as we close here today, I want to thank you for joining me and for being honest and real about the world that you live in. And remember, as the day comes to a close and the new morning arrives, you're not alone, nor am I. God bless you all. Bye for now.